It all started with the Civil War. This area contained a Confederate prisoner of war camp. Camp Douglas covered 35 acres which stretched from Martin Luther King Drive all the way to Lake Michigan. It was the northern prison with the highest mortality rate of all Civil War POW camps. The camp and the soldiers who died are memorialized by the Griffin Funeral Home, located at 32nd Street and Martin Luther King Drive. That funeral home is famous for helping put many prominent African Americans to rest, including Jesse Owens, Elijah Muhammad, the leader of the Nation of Islam, and Emmett Till. That land for the POW camp was donated by Stephen A. Douglas, the senator who was made famous by the Lincoln-Douglas debates. The debates between Douglas and Abraham Lincoln centered on whether the slaves should be freed. Douglas's tomb stands at the eastern end of 35th Street. Soon after the war ended, African Americans migrated to the South in search of a promised land. They were drawn to Chicago by reading copies of Robert Abbott's black-owned newspaper, The Defender, which was left on the railroad cars by the porters of the Illinois Central Railroad. They settled on the south side of the city, which is known today as Bronzeville. Here in Bronzeville, they opened businesses, formed congregations, and gave birth to jazz. That rich jazz history remains on the southwest corner of Martin Luther King Drive and 35th Street. The Myers Ace Hardware store first opened in 1921 as the Sunset Cafe. It was Bronzeville's equivalent of Harlem's Cotton Club. After closing in 1937, it reopened as the Grand Terrace Ballroom, and it was controlled by Al Capone. In fact, Earl Hines and young Count Basie were among the cavalcade of now famous house musicians who worked there. The owner, David, will take you into his office and show off the mural that once graced the stage at the Grand Terrace Ballroom. Across Martin Luther King Drive is the Supreme Life Building. It was one of the largest African American insurance companies in the nation. Earl B. Dickerson, the first African American to graduate from the University of Chicago Law School, successfully guided the company through the Depression. John Johnson founded his company, Johnson Publishing, the largest black-owned publishing company, which publishes Ebony and Jet magazines in a back office there at the Supreme Life Building. Today, the building houses the Bronzeville Visitor Center. This just touches a little of the history that was made in the Quad communities. They comprise North Kenwood, Oakland, Douglas, and Grand Boulevard. These neighborhoods are part of an area known as the Black Metropolis. Dr. Margaret Burroughs, the internationally known artist who lives in the Grand Boulevard community, in the house where she and her husband, Bernard Goss, found the DuSable Museum of African American History, also helped to form another historic landmark in the Grand Boulevard community. The Southside Community Arts Center, which is located directly across the street from her house, forming an African American cultural corridor in that neighborhood. The center continues to teach and showcase local art today. Walk through it and you'll almost feel like former First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt is still there, ready to cut the ribbon and open the center that would be home to scores of black artists. Another Quad Communities native, musician Greg Parker, shares his extensive collection of music memorabilia at his Chicago Blues Museum. The Chicago Blues Museum is temporarily housed at the DuSable Museum, which long ago outgrew Dr. Burroughs' house and relocated to Washington Park. Mr. Parker has had a long and successful music career. He's played with groups in varied genre from the Jackson 5 to the Rolling Stones. The Chicago Blues Museum is filled with his personal photos, music, and memories. So if you're lucky, Mr. Parker will be there when you visit. Plan to stay a while. His stories will amaze you. Great musicians grace the stage at the famous Sutherland Lounge at 47th Street and Drexel Boulevard. Though it's now been turned into apartments, the old Sutherland Hotel was once home to Louis Armstrong. Miles Davis spent most Christmas holidays there, and Dizzy Gillespie, John Coltrane, Earl Garner, Nat King Cole, and Dinah Washington all graced the stage. 2 blocks east on 47th Street is the Little Black Pearl Art and Design Center. The Little Black Pearl Workshop was started 10 years ago in a basement of a gravestone. Its mission was to serve the youth of the Quad communities. Today, the workshop is now an art and design center which operates from a sleek new 40,000 square foot space. Little Black Pearl is one of many new structures in the Quad communities. There is plenty of new housing. This is a product of the Chicago Housing Authority's plan for transformation. The Quad communities were once home to several housing projects, like the Ida B. Wells homes and the lakefront properties, which suffered from severe disinvestment. When they were built, the developments were a beacon of hope to low-income families. The lakefront properties even had a lakefront view. Over the years, drug and gang activity took over, and now the lakefront properties have been demolished and are known for one of the largest implosions in the country. The implosion was televised in the late 1990s, and the Ida B. Wells homes have been vacated and torn down, where only 3 buildings remain standing. In their place is a new dream. Beautiful mixed-income housing like Oakwood Shores, where the Ida B. Wells homes once stood, and Lake Park Crescent still faces the lake. Safe mixed-income housing that once again will provide a beacon of hope for the community. Less than a mile away is another beacon of hope, not only for the neighborhood, but for the country. It is the home of the 44th President of the United States, Barack Obama, who lives at 51st Street and Greenwood. It reminds us daily of just how far we've come, from Civil War to civil rights, all the way to the White House.